Okay, so if everybody's answered those questions, got your brain thinking either the morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Whilst they're doing that, I'm just going to hand over to Katie.
Thanks, Sophie. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Katie Litchfield, and I'm the founder of WeQual, and it is my honor to introduce Mark Bateman, my business partner, the chief executive of WeQual, and now author of his new book. Mark has built many businesses, built and sold them, and he's also coached so many senior executives, as well as some of the most influential CEOs in the world. I actually first met Mark by chance via LinkedIn 4 years ago. And it was then I realized that he thinks very differently, and he has a knack of explaining his thoughts, which then made me think very differently and make very different decisions that I would have normally not done. With no further ado, Mark Bateman, author, over to you for your masterclass.
Oh, Katie, thank you so much. Yes, I remember the day that we very first messaged and then spoke. I remember exactly where I was. So thank you so much for that introduction. It is just such a genuine joy to say hello to everybody here today. It is a masterclass. The topic very much is around disruptive leadership, using fire to drive purposeful change. And it just so happens to be the day also that my new book is out. So more about that later. So I want to tell a little bit of a story, first of all, really, as to really why we're even running this masterclass. And I think it's something to do as well with why I find myself as the CEO of WeQual, and why I wrote the book. So I first of all wrote the book, started just about 5 years ago, pre-COVID, if you can remember, all the way back in time. It's like a blip now, isn't it, in our memories, COVID. At the time, I was trying to figure out what was the best way to help leaders. So those of you who have responsibility, who have influence over others in order to achieve some kind of outcome. What was the thing that I could do to have the greatest impact to help leaders achieve something purposeful? And I thought, well, what I would love to do is run a leadership retreat. And the leadership retreat would be, say, a 5-day event where everybody would fly in to a really lovely location. And every single day we would do something in order to help every single leader that came along to reconnect with who they were, reconnect with their sense of purpose, to re-energize, restore, repurpose, revision. And so then I started to think about, well, what would I actually cover on a 5-day retreat? And I started making notes. So I do this Monday, this Tuesday, this Wednesday. Oh, no. Like, I'm only regurgitating everything that is already being done on executive development programs everywhere in the world. I thought, no, I'd have to bring something unique and something new. And so I just moved to London at the time, and I spent a lot of time walking the royal parks of London, walking all around London. I would sit down, and I was really wrestling with this question of, what is there new in the world of leadership? And I came up with the analogy of fire. Now, fire is always disruptive. If you have a fire that gets started in your kitchen right now, that is not a good type of fire that you want, unless it's on, you have a gas hob and you're boiling some eggs or something. Then it's a good type of fire. So fire can be either positive or it can be really negative. And fire is always disruptive. And by disruptive, my definition for disruption or disruptive is that it challenges the status quo. And the status quo is something that exists. It's something that it just is right now. And the moment we want to change something, we have to challenge the status. We have to change it. We have to do something to change that status quo. Fire always changes the status quo. So this was really this interesting concept. And the more I reflected on it, the more, I guess, ancient wisdom I saw within it, the more powerful the analogy came. And it actually resulted in the book. So I kind of want to go back to first principles. How do you start a fire? And we have, in the English language, we have all these expressions, he or she has fire in her belly. that sparked something new for me. Oh, that was a wildfire. We have all these fire analogies, fire metaphors that we use in our language, and they all often refer to something that is either explosive or something that's innovative, something about energy, about passion, about purpose. And so I thought, well, okay, so as leaders, what is it we're trying to do? Well, there's two aspects to fire. One is we actually want to start a fire because we want to make a difference. We want to do it in a positive way. And secondly, it means that actually we need to have fire ourselves as leaders because we're wanting to, in a sense, set fire to other things. So rewinding all the way back, really first key question I want to ask you is, for anybody to be disruptive, you have to be willing to challenge the status quo. But how do you want to challenge the status quo? And ultimately, it comes down to the difference that you want to make. The most common question I ask everybody if you meet me ultimately is, what is it you're on this earth to do? What's your purpose? Why are you alive? What is it that you're spending your energy doing? What is it you're spending your time doing? And for some of you, you're really clear as to what that is. And for others of you, well, I've not really thought about it in that way. And yet, I guarantee that within a few minutes of talking, it become really obvious that you are really driven to make a difference. And every single leadership development program, every single management development program, every single person I've coached, ultimately, it boils down to wanting to make a difference. And I believe as human beings, and those of us who find ourselves in positions of leadership, typically the difference that we want to make is something positive for other people. Now, to make a difference it can be quite difficult, right? Katie and I, we launched WeQual. Katie founded WeQual just over 4 years ago, and we're trying to drive gender equality at the top of the world's largest companies. That is a really big purpose, and we know that it's a global problem. So we're kind of very aware of the difference that we want to make, but boy, that is not an easy task. And for those of you that are women inside organizations, you know how needful it is for organizations to better support their women. That is a really, really, really big difference. And so how do you do that? Well, you need a lot of energy and time. Now, your own sense of purpose, it may not be as clearly defined as that. It may be more generic right now. But I think it's really important to think about, what is the difference that you want to make? Because all of us only have so much time on this earth, and all of us only have so much energy. And the wonderful thing about us as human beings, by the way, is that we can use our energy through the day, and provided that we keep a little bit left at the end of the day and we go to sleep on time and we rest well overnight, we have energy again the next day. So for 80, 90, 70, whatever number of years, our energy kind of does this, right? We use it during the day, and then we sleep at night, and our energy increases. But time, once you spend time, it's gone. And, I'm 55 now, and I'm so conscious of how quickly time is flying by. Literally one day just flies by. So I think it's really important that each of us asks ourselves, not just for ourselves and for our teams and for our organizations, but what's the difference that we really want to make? And when we think about difference, we can kind of fast forward it and think, okay, actually, difference is also related to legacy. So how do I measure the difference that I want to make? What is ultimately the legacy that I want to leave? Now, if you've never thought about this, forgive me, especially if it's early morning for you, because it's like, wow, okay, this is deep. But gosh, if we're not spending time thinking about these questions, I think the risk becomes that we get involved in something that is not truly related to us. And there's something called transactional analysis. And you may have come across this about the ego states, parent, adult, child. Now, when we're small children, the only way that we can keep ourselves safe is to do everything ultimately that our parent needs us to do for us to win love, to win affection, to win affirmation, validation, safety, food, protection, etc. And as small children, we are really clever at how we do that. We're really clever at figuring out how to keep ourselves safe as small children. And we learn these amazing skills that we can take through into our adult lives. But the problem is, if we carry on trying to win the validation or the affirmation of others, the risk becomes that we spend our entire lives doing that, which means, if we're not careful, that we can lose our own personal sense of purpose, the difference that I want to make. We end up doing something for somebody else that is not true to who we are. And so really my first question to you, and it doesn't matter whether you're in a very tiny company, it doesn't matter whether you maybe just a mom looking after small children, or whether you have a shop, or whether you are responsible for thousands of people. What is the difference that you want to make? At the end of your life, what is the difference you want to have made? Because if you're really clear about that, actually, in a sense, life becomes a little bit easier. It also becomes harder. But the first stage is it becomes easier because every decision point that you face in life, whether it's for you personally, whether it's for your team, whether it's for your business unit, your division, your company, it comes back to that sense of purpose. Because if you're really clear about where it is you want to go, the difference you want to make, and you have a choice to make, it's like, well, does this choice help me get to where I want to get to or not? So once we get clear about the difference we want to make, well, then we've got to start doing something about it. And we start doing something about it. Difference. If you look at a battery, there's always a plus and a minus on a battery. And the higher the voltage, the higher the amount of energy, if you like, that sits within that battery, the battery size increases. And it means that the amount of energy that needs to flow from plus down to minus gets bigger depending on the resistance. Now, depending on the difference that you want to make, you're going to need a lot of energy. And as you expend that energy, if you remember physics from secondary school, as you expend energy, it lets off heat. So as you get about doing something, just have to rub your hands together, it starts generating heat. Now, when I come back to the analogy of fire, for a fire to burn, it requires three things: heat, fuel, oxygen. So you as a leader, you're really clear about the difference you want to make. Okay, you set about doing it. It might be very difficult. And in fact, the bigger the difference that you want to make, the more difficult it's going to be, the more energy that you're going to need. And you're going to have to expend that energy over time. Sales is not easy. Marketing is not easy. Leading teams is not easy. Trying to break into a new market is very difficult. Trying to change the culture of an organization, very, very difficult. Whatever it is that you're trying to do right now, chances are there is a high difficulty factor to it because of the difference between what is right now and the difference that you want to see. So you expend energy. And as you expend energy, you generate heat. So for me, heat is purpose in action. As you get about doing the thing that you really want to do, generates heat. Heat is the first component of fire. So my very first question to you is, what's the difference you want to make? How clear are you about that difference? Have you written it down? Is it one sentence? And for me, the difference that I want to make, certainly in a professional capacity, is I want to enable every leader that I work with to achieve meaningful purpose. Now, I did a master's back in 2008. It really forced me to think. It was in leadership coaching and mentoring. It really forced me to think about my professional purpose. And so when I met Katie and she said, well, I'm trying to start a business related to getting more women to the very top of the world's largest companies, it became obvious really quickly that we could work together and there was a need to work together. But now I had a choice. Do I stop doing what I was doing myself as a leadership coach, working with businesses and senior leaders, and join with Katie in this new mission? And ultimately, and I had a number of different opportunities at the time. And I thought, well, what is my personal purpose? Well, my personal purpose is to enable leaders to achieve meaningful purpose. And here, Katie has this incredible vision working globally with senior leaders globally. It's like, yes, that absolutely fits with my purpose. So the decision was easy in that sense. And I've not looked back since. What is your difference that you want to make? So the moment you get about your difference, you start generating heat. Well, okay, how do you now start to achieve the difference you want to make? Well, this is where the analogy of fire comes in. So the second aspect to fire is fuel. And quite simply, if you really want to make a difference, you have to influence others. And if you want to grow a business, launch a service, launch a product, change culture, you primarily need two things for your fuel: amazing, talented, wonderful people. And secondly, ultimately, cash, capital, which is your resources. And so if you're wanting to drive a difference within your organization, you're launching into a new market, you're trying to increase efficiencies internally, and you know you're dealing with people, and people like to hold on to what they have, which is the status quo, and you want to make a difference there, you know you're going to have to bring along with you amazing people. And people are like you in that they have energy to give and they have time to give. And one of the most important aspects of leadership, and we hear it often, is the term engagement. So as you build your team, as you lead teams in order to achieve the difference that you or your company is seeking to make, how do you engage people? Because ultimately engagement means people bring in of their all. They bring their brains, they bring their energy, they bring their hearts. That is what true engagement means. And yet, if we look at the data from Gallup alone, only about a third of employees are engaged at work, which means 2/3 aren't, which means 2/3 of employees are not bringing their all to work. Well, why is that? Well, strangely, or maybe it's obvious, the number one reason is their relationship with their line manager. Ouch. So that means that the reason that people aren't engaged at work, bearing in mind, all of us, I believe, want to make a positive difference. So the people in our teams, any lack of engagement could well be because of their relationship, dare I say, with you, which puts actually a great sense of responsibility upon us as leaders. Because the moment we start influencing other people, the moment we start attracting incredible people to our cause, we have influence over their lives. We start to be able to dictate what they work on, when they work on it, what the priorities are, what the timeframes are. Can they take lunch hours? How do they need to dress? How do they need to talk? How do they need to behave? Do they have freedom to make decisions? Or are we a little bit control freaky and we need to control everything they're doing? These are really difficult things. And so actually, when we start to look at how we make a difference, the quality of us as leaders really comes to the fore. And the greatest leaders in the world, and by the way, I define greatness not by short-term success. Anybody can have short-term success. I'm going to come back to the analogy of fire. Think about a wildfire for a second, right? A wildfire means the conditions are right for a stray spark to set off a fire which consumes and destroys. And no matter where we are in the world right now, with climate change, we can see the devastating impact of wildfires. Now, for me, wildfires in a business context or a company context is caused by opportune leaders who take advantage of that moment in order to make money, to gain power. It's about their ego. It's not ultimately to make a positive difference. So for me, great leadership are those leaders who seek to leave an enduring legacy. It's something that is judged through the eyes of others to be great. And ultimately, I believe the only two ways to measure that is, one, it's great for humanity, i.e., it's great for people like you and I. Secondly, it's great for the planet. Okay, that's a challenge. What does that actually mean? What does that look like? And yet I believe that as leaders, the moment we seek about making a difference, either on our own account or through the incredible companies that we work for, enduring legacy, the responsibility that we have as leaders. I often say leadership is a calling, and some of us feel called to it, and some of us, it's almost thrust upon us. I never meant to be a leader, and yet here you are, and you have remarkable influence over other people. And so your quality as a leader really counts. How you invest in yourself, how you develop yourself, your levels of self-awareness, your levels of awareness of others, your empathy, how you prioritize, how you set strategy, how you communicate, how you build teams, how you set vision, the culture that you build, and ultimately the difference that you seek. And one of the wonderful things, I think, and I think we can often forget this, if we come back to the subject of engagement, is every single one of you wants to make a difference. One of the wonderful things about WeQual is we put an advert out saying we want whatever it is, and lots of people apply because they really buy into our sense of purpose. It makes it a lot easier to recruit. But it's a really critical aspect of engagement. So when you're seeking to make this difference, either by the company's vision and purpose statement or how you personally fit with that company and vision statement, alignment is really important. How does your own sense of difference, the difference that you want to make, your personal purpose, align with that of your company? And the greater the alignment, the more engagement you're likely to feel. The more you want to bring of yourself, because it's not really about the company so much anymore. It's about the difference you want to make. And what is a company? A company is a collection of people who want to make a difference. And here's the service or the product to make that difference. And so when you're leading teams, finding out the personal difference, the personal sense of purpose that each member of your team wants to make, and making sure that you're aligned, that drives engagement. Within the book, I've interviewed circa 20 very, very senior leaders representing some of the world's biggest brands. I might show you a slide a little bit later on. And they tell all these incredible stories of the difference that they want to make, of how they engage people, of how they utilize cash. I'm not going to spend too much time in cash in this masterclass right now, but often we believe that cash is the answer to everything. And so many times in one-on-one coaching settings, I hear a leader say, gosh, if only I had more money, I'd actually be able to make the difference that I want to make, but we're cost cutting right now. There's efficiencies. We can't do what we need to do. I remember the CEO of a very large company during COVID. He said to me, Mark, we have to completely transition ourselves as a company. The value of our company has dropped by 2/3 because of COVID. COVID literally took their cash away, and actually it took the third aspect of fire, which is oxygen. It took their oxygen away. Now, oxygen is your customers or your market. It's ultimately the people that you're wanting to make a difference for. So if oxygen is your customers in your market for this particular company, COVID, it stopped their company overnight. They had to go and raise billions in a very short period of time. And the CEO was saying to me, Mark, I don't know how we're going to do it because we've got no cash. And from the outside, I'm saying, but you've got this global brand, you've got a world-class supply chain, you've still got significant investment in terms of people around R&D and innovation. Plus, you've got so much. Go and start a business from scratch, and then you'll know what it's like to have no money. So actually, I don't believe cash should ever be a reason not to do something, ever. Because if the difference is worth having, if it's worth doing, then there's a risk attached to that. You have to start pursuing the difference that you want to make. So coming back to oxygen, I interviewed Daniela Kashish. She's the, I can't remember her exact title right now, president at Ambev in Brazil. She's one of Brazil's most powerful marketeers. And she spoke powerfully to how, or the need to connect sense of purpose, the difference you want to make through all of your marketing in order to engage with your target customers. Because your target customers is your oxygen. And when you first start, if you're right at the outset right now of launching something or trying to change something or trying to do something, you have to win those first customers. Those customers may be internal. They may be key stakeholders. They may be key investors. They may be key partners, key suppliers, key customers. You have to start somewhere, and it always starts with one. And then as you start to grow your fire, you have to increase your heat, your fuel, your oxygen. And in the book, what I talk about is not only how to start your fire, but also how to grow your fire and how to protect your fire. Now, growing your fire, I've already touched on a really, really critical aspect, and I'm looking at you, all right? You are the critical aspect to growing your fire. It is the quality of your leadership, which ultimately means the quality of you as a human being. Prioritization, being able to strategize, being able to engage people in this pursuit of making the difference that you seek, of being resilient, okay, which touches on the third aspect of what I want to talk about. So let's imagine we started our fire. We've launched our product. The company's growing, the service is growing, customers are coming, we're getting the oxygen, we're attracting wonderful people, they're engaging in the sense of purpose, we're making the difference. We are now disrupting. Disrupting is challenging the status quo. And don't forget, by the way, the bigger, and I've said this many times, the bigger the difference you want to make, the more energy you need and the longer amount of time it's going to take, especially if it's something meaningful and purposeful. The status quo is like a powerful cartel. It protects its own. Systems and processes and politics and ego and power, raw, naked power protects what is. And here you are trying to make a difference. And it doesn't really matter the size of company. You can take Meta, you can take Amazon, you can take Apple. This still applies to those organizations as much as it does if you run a smaller company. To truly disrupt takes energy and time. And as a leader, you have to ensure you're able to stand the test of time, which again comes actually down to the quality of you as a human being and your resilience levels. Now, for an organization, for anybody to stand the test of time, we have to watch out for something called entropy. Now, I remember studying this at school, and I remember forgetting as much as I studied. And so when I was researching this for the book, I had to remind myself of thermodynamics. And the second law of thermodynamics says this, that within a closed system, entropy increases over time. What does entropy mean? Well, entropy literally means a slide towards chaos and disorder. And I just want you to imagine for a second your kettle. We all use, pretty much all of us use a kettle every single day. We fill it up with water from the tap at maybe about 20 degrees centigrade, maybe 15, maybe cooler. And at that temperature, actually the H2O molecules within that kettle are all over the place. They're all at different temperatures. The variation of the amount of energy that each of those individual water molecules have is very, very broad. Some are slightly warmer, some are slightly colder. Then what you do is you plug it in, you turn it on, and external energy comes into the closed system that is your kettle. And the heat at the bottom starts to heat the water molecules. And what it does is, instead of this wide variation where all of these molecules are all doing lots of different things, instead they all start to align. They all start to have the same vibration, vibrating at the same amount of energy. And as these molecules hit 100 degrees centigrade, they escape from the water in steam. This is our job as a leader, is to ensure that within our organizations, within our teams, even within ourselves, that we are all vibrating at the optimal temperature to achieve what we want to do. To do that, we have to ensure that we don't become a closed system. And a closed system is the equivalent of turning the energy, turning the electricity off towards that kettle. Because when that happens, slowly but surely over time, instead of everybody being united about what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to do, being innovative, disrupting ourselves because of the external energy coming in, we start to just rely, almost like an echo chamber. We start listening to the same voices. We think the same thoughts. When I was researching for the book, I can't remember how many thoughts each of us has a day, and it's actually extremely difficult to measure, but it's at least 70,000, and it could be way higher than that. But what's fascinating is that the vast majority of our thoughts every single day are exactly the same thoughts as we thought yesterday. And think about it. Your alarm clock goes off first thing in the morning. What's your first thought? Well, what am I doing today? I need to turn the alarm clock off. I need to get up. What am I going to wear? Well, I'm going to brush my teeth. We just do the same thing day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out. And if not careful, as a company, we end up doing the same thing day in, day out, day in, day out. We risk becoming like Kodak. And Kodak, their vision statement, ultimately, right from the very outset, was to make photography as simple as using a pencil. I quite like that sense of purpose. That's really understandable. And then in the 1970s, they were the world's experts at film. And there was a dominant market. It was hugely profitable. And then somebody in a lab coat deep down in some underground basement created the very first digital image. Kodak. What did they do? Oh, no, we don't want that. That's way too disruptive. And so they buried it. Where's Kodak today? How do we ensure that the success that we gain as a company isn't disrupted by an external? Because the moment we achieve success, we can become the status quo, which means we are now ready to be disrupted. So we have to continually ensure that we are disrupting from within. The only way to do that is to primarily to do two things: to gain external energy and to have time to think. There's some research done around the kind of company that sustains competitive advantage over time. And it came down to those two things. They need external energy and they need time to think. Now, there's something called triple loop learning, which I've slightly modified in the book to level 1, 2, and 3 thinking. And what's fascinating is when we apply this to our own lives, to our team, and to our companies, if we spend the time thinking through the questions and the answers to these questions, it can help protect us from being disrupted from the outside by ensuring that we're continually staying true to our sense of purpose. And these are the three questions. Question number 1, am I or are we getting it right? Now, I call this level 1 thinking. Circa 54, 57% of all managers globally operate at this level. It's a focus on ultimately quite binary thinking. Yes, no. Now, for many of us, that thinking can be helpful. If I'm learning a new skill, if it's the very first time I'm doing a performance review, my focus is going to be on getting it right. And that's kind of important. I need to learn the skills of doing a performance review. What are the questions? How do I ask them? How do I mark them? How do I write them? Where do I file it? Right? Very basic. The second question is, am I doing the right thing? Are we doing it right? So the first question, am I getting it right? The second question is, it's just gone, hang on a second. This is the problem of doing something live and then are we doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? So I have a 65-year-old man who's about to retire. I'm about to do his performance review. Level 1 thinking would be, right, I'm going to ask these 20 questions. Yet in reality, it's not relevant. The reality is actually for Bob now, he's retiring tomorrow. So what are you planning on doing? I step away because I don't need to focus on getting it right anymore. The right thing is actually engaging with Bob. Now, when we apply this to our companies, very often we get caught in doing the same thing day over day in, day over day in, and we focus on getting it right. Are my emails answered? Am I attending my meetings on time? Have I achieved my objectives? The trouble is, if the objectives were set a year ago and the whole market's changed, I'm working on the wrong thing. So I need to ask a much more powerful question. Am I working on the right thing? Am I doing the right thing here? And then the third question, which is only about 4% of leaders globally, is how do we decide what's right? And for me, this is the most powerful question that we can ask ourselves. How do we decide what's right? How do I decide what's right for me? How do we as a team decide what's right? How do we decide as a company what's right? And ultimately, the answer to that question should always come back to our purpose. What's the vision? What's the end point that we're trying to achieve? And our purpose is our mission. It's the difference that we want to make. And I often describe this as, if I give the kind of analogy, but if I was to break you in half, what would you bleed? What will you die trying to do? Because that ultimately is your purpose. That's the difference that you want to make. And when we look at the research around the organizations that are able to ensure competitive, sustainable advantage, they're the companies that are asking that third question. How do we decide what's right? And it's a very difficult question. There's no easy answers to it, and it takes a lot of time. And those organizations that continually disrupt themselves are called learning organizations. They're operating at that level 3. They are thinking about thinking. They are learning about learning. They are constantly able to step back. And as a species, we believe we are unique currently in the universe, that we can think about our thinking. Very powerful. And so if you're running a meeting, you're running a strategy session, you're setting vision, you're setting objectives for the year, what are the kinds of questions we should be asking ourselves? Are they the right questions? Are there more powerful questions? When we asked that question last year, did it elicit the results that we were looking for? And how did we engage as a team? What were the dynamics? How can we improve those? And the other thing about a learning organization is they get external energy. And external energy means people that think differently to you, that have different life experience to you, that see the world differently to you. And so often as leaders, it's a very easy trap to fall into, that we hire in our own image. And it's why bias exists. It's kind of a natural thing in a way. We have to work at hiring and engaging with those that are different to us. Why? Because it brings challenge, and challenge generates heat. And so if you want to continually disrupt yourselves, you have to open yourselves up to diverse perspectives, diverse opinions, people that are different to you. It's a key reason why, as companies increase gender equality, for example, at the top, those companies become better on every single important metric: revenues, profitability, employee engagement, customer service, more spend on R&D, less risky decisions, employee engagement increases. But also those companies become better for the planet. And when we think about great leadership, we have to remember those two key outcomes. One, is it better for people? Two, is it better for the planet? And actually, as you increase diversity at the top of large organizations, those organizations perform better and they're better for the planet. It's generally win-win. And the other aspect of a learning organization, those companies that disrupt themselves, is those leaders not only get external energy, but critical thinking, time to think. And one of the questions that I asked at the outset in the poll is, how much time do you spend each week thinking strategically? Because it is so easy to get so caught up in the emails, in back-to-back meetings, in all the demands that there is continuously, personally, and at work. If we're not forcing ourselves to create time to think, to breathe, to reconnect to ourselves, to our own sense of purpose, to understand how that aligns with the company that we're working for, to make a difference, to influence those amazing, wonderful people who are reliant upon us ultimately for their own sense of purpose and fulfillment and engagement. It is so important that we as leaders take time out. Yet the demands are so great, which is kind of why I say leadership is a calling, because it's not easy. Whether you chose it or whether you feel like you fell into it, whichever, here you are with amazing responsibility for wonderful people wanting to make a difference. So one of the key challenges I always give to any leader is to earmark time out every single week to think. I remember one CEO, I'm going to finish very, very shortly, and then we'll get 10 minutes for questions. I mean, one CEO I was working with, she, like any other senior leader, she was working 60, 70 hours a week. And she would kind of crawl to the finish line before going on holiday, then in a 2-week holiday to try and recharge herself, and then give everything she had again in the work environment. And I said, wait a minute, what if you took half a day a week? Not possible, Mark. Okay, fair enough. But what if you did? That's not possible. I know you don't believe it's possible, but what if you did? What would happen if you took half a day just to think about the thing that you're trying to do in this business? She goes, well, everything would change. Well, what would change? Well, first of all, I'd make sure that I was working on the things that were really important. Okay. Secondly, I'd make sure the team were working on the things that were really important. Okay. Third, I'd have energy to invest in the things that are really important. Okay, that sounds good so far. What would the outcome be? Well, I'd be ensuring that as a company, we're working on the right things. Okay. And you're telling me you can't afford to do that? So energy and time, they're the two things you have as a leader. How are you spending them? What's the difference you want to make? So, Sophie, I think we're coming to you. I can't remember.
Thank you very
question.
much. Gosh, on behalf of all of that was very insightful. So thank you very much. We've already got 3 questions that I would love to share. I'm happy to read them out. Or Patricia, what would you prefer? Would you like to read out your own question?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you a lot, Mark, for your sharing. So I have a question about resources, actually. So if I'm not enabled with people and the cash, right? So no fuel provided by my organization, is there still a way to drive the transformation? What would you suggest us to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. One of my working definitions for a leader is somebody who can influence outcomes, right? So what you're describing is akin to being an entrepreneur, actually, in that you don't have the resources that you believe that you need in order to achieve the outcome that you desire. My working definition for an entrepreneur is somebody who creates something from nothing. Because nothing existed before the entrepreneur turned up, and the entrepreneur literally almost magics something out of nothing. And so actually, if you've not been given the resources, the cash that you need, or even necessarily the people that you need, then here's an incredible opportunity for you to, if you don't already have it, to develop a new skill of influence, where you're able to influence stakeholders. And you're going to be trying to figure out wins, right? Here's the difference that you want to make. Here's a difference that somebody else wants to make. Well, how do they align? And the moment you can find where that aligns, that's where you can find the point where you can start to utilize some of their energy and some of their time to help you achieve the thing that you're trying to do. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
And what I would encourage you to do is to put some time in your diary, and you mark it as the company's most important project. So everybody thinks, oh my gosh, it can't disturb Patricia because she's working on this critical project that we all know is really important. You take yourself away outside of your normal environment. So you get away from your laptop, you get away from your desk, you go for a walk, you walk through trees, you go to somewhere that feels more creative, and then you give yourself permission. Okay, how am I going to do this? Because within you, there is something remarkable. there's a difference you want to make, kind of set fire to yourself, if you like, allow that passion to build, give yourself time to think.
Super, thank you a lot.
Thank you, Patricia. Going first, I think the next one's from Anna.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, Adam.
Well, 8 o'clock in the morning. What a start of the day. Really beautiful. You gave me a lot of food for thought. Look, my question, I'll rephrase it a little bit, and it's also based on experience. These conversations do happen in companies, but I have noticed multiple times that people at your level or below you are more willing to praise your courage when you really want to ask this kind of questions, the questions that you put on our list today. And it doesn't necessarily happen when you look upwards. My conclusion is that maybe more junior people or younger people that look at you and to try to assess your courage and your ability to really embrace failure and learn from it, while the people upwards feel responsible for failure and do the ostrich thing, trying to prevent the conversation. So how do we get out of this enigmatic maze?
If I understand your question, Anna, what you're saying is you kind of feel trapped between executive leaders or very senior leaders who are maybe not making the decisions and behaving in the way that you would love them to behave, and yet those that report into you are looking to you to make the difference. Is that
correct?
I heard a quote very recently that was, be the leader that you want your leader to be.
Wow. Okay. I like
Hard,
it.
right?
Hard. Very
difficult, hard. difficult. Yeah. And yet here we are. And I can see, as you were asking the question, lots of people are, well, yeah, I have that question too. So the difference that you want to make is, how do you influence those above you in order to make this meaningful difference? And you know that everybody, I say below you, everybody's reporting into you, who looks up to you, who you have influence over, is saying, please, Anna, please, whoever you are, yes, we need you to do this. Okay, so here's your challenge. Here's the difference. How are you going to do it? Well, you're not going to do it if you stay in a child state towards those who are more senior to you, who you perceive as being in the parent state, because the power dynamic is all wrong. And again, I talk about this in my book. When you're engaging with senior stakeholders, we have to divest, we have to remove the sense that we have less power. It's not about power. It's about being a human being. It's about coming into a conversation, adult to adult, where I'm no longer trying to please you. I'm not trying to curry your favor. I'm not trying to get validation or affirmation from you. My self-worth is secure regardless of whether you like me or not. But I believe you're trying to make a difference, senior leader. I believe that as the market is changing, we've got AI coming in, we've got disruptors, we've got investors, that here is the really big critical issue that we need to be facing. I've been giving this a lot of thought. I would love to talk with you about it. And you find the win-wins. You figure out how to engage with that person. And you always speak to purpose. We get too caught up in personalities. Instead, think about purpose. Because the moment you speak about purpose, the moment you speak about the vision that your company has, the 3 key strategic objectives that your chair or your CEO has spoken at the last big stand-up, the moment you're speaking to that at the high level, people will be listening. They may not agree with you, but
you're removing the ego, in other words, right?
Yes. And if you get blocked and you feel this is no longer the environment for you, move on. Right? Move on, because life is too short. I have a match here, and I didn't know if I was going to do this or not. When I do it, I want to imagine in 1 second, right? So here's a match. Whether this is one day in our lives or whether this is our entire lives, one match. And on this match, there is some fuel, right? It's the wood. Now, for us to ignite this, it requires some energy, purpose in action, which is about friction. So the only way you can light a match is with friction. Friction is you trying to make the difference that you want to make. It's difficult. If it was easy, we wouldn't have the rich lives that we have. We wouldn't feel that sense of fulfillment. And actually, crushing despair is an aspect of being human. I'd rather feel crushing despair and still be human and alive than not. So friction, this is the difference I want to make. And so here we are. And now we're burning. What are we burning for? Do we want the easy life? Or are we genuinely wanting to make a difference? And before we know it, oh, it's getting hot. Ow. Before we know it, it's gone. It's gone. How do you want to spend your life? Do you want to spend your life on something that's meaningful, that makes a difference, that knows failure because you've tried to make a difference? My book, if I was to write about my failures, would be a library full. And all we're bothered about is success. No, failure is part of the journey. But it's about making a difference. And at the end of our lives, and it goes really quick, what does it want to look back on?
It is.
Sorry.
No, very good, Anna. Thank you very much. That was a great question. As you said, everybody was nodding and agreeing that was one that they wanted to have answered. So, and be the leader that you want your leader to be. Very powerful. In terms of other questions, Anya and Pascal will follow up with you directly. And any other questions that anybody has, we do encourage you to come forward. We will follow up. We will put some time in. We'll write some of the answers so you get those answered. But for now, I'm going to hand back just to talk about wrapping up and thanking you for the session. So back to you, Mark.
Thank you. Just a very quick note. These are just some of the contributors in the book. And I can't tell you how honored I was and super proud, actually, I am. But each of these leaders here speak. This is the roles at the time I interviewed them. Some of them have moved on since. But for example, Mark Cutifani, Anglo-American, dubbed the patron saint of mining. He turned Anglo-American inside out. Made it far, mining is a dirty business. Let's not forget that. Yet every single one of us relies on the products from mining in our everyday lives. He turned that company inside out. Down bottom right, Jean-Pascal Tricouri, Schneider Electric, huge company. He recognized, so a Paris French-based company, global company, but French-based, recognized the growing market in Asia and recognized he had to disrupt the company from the inside in order to ensure that they stayed relevant. He talked about that in the book. Sramathi from HR, every single one of these men and women speak very powerfully to different aspects of disruptive leadership. And it is an absolute joy. And forgive me for a very quick pitch. But my book is out today, the 23rd of January. You can buy it on Amazon. If you're in the UK, I mean, everywhere in the world, it's 99p, 99 cents, whether it's euros or dollars or whatever else. But if you're in the UK, buying it on Kindle, even if you don't have a Kindle, would really help me, simply because that's what's being used for the ratings. And to get to #1 bestseller would be incredible. But you can buy the book. The Kindle version in the UK, as I say, goes towards the ratings. It's available right now. And it's such a joy to be here with you today. Thank you. We're going to do a quick, if we can, quick NPS score. So this actually is a WeQual event. There's a number of people on the call today who are not WeQuals, can I say? And we have something called WeQual Executives, which is for women from globally listed companies at C-suite -1 and -2. That's our executive level. And we're launching something called the Rising Leaders from March this year, which is for companies who really want to support their women through middle management levels, because we know that's where the cliff face drop is. And we're partnering with companies to really help move the needle at scale and globally. But thank you so much. Katie, I don't know if you just want to, can you just quickly wrap up?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I get to work with this man every day, right? Can you imagine just having Mark on tap for whatever advice I need or coaching. Honestly, it's been an absolute blessing. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Mark, I just so proud, honestly, so proud. And yeah, let's see
It's such a
where
joy
this
to work with
goes.
you, Katie. Such a joy.
High five. Here to gender equality and changing the world. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mark. And look forward to seeing you soon. Goodbye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you all. Ciao.
Thanks very much. Congratulations, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda.